In this video, we're going to continue our discussion with complex numbers. So now we're going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide complex numbers. So let's start with an addition problem. So just combine like terms. We've got 3 plus a negative 7, that's negative 4. 4i plus 12i, 16i, done. Let's take a look at a subtraction. Distribute the negative. Combine like terms. And we are in a plus bi form. Let's multiply. 6 times 3 is 18. I times I is I squared. Now remember, I squared is equal to negative 1. So you have 18 times a negative 1. That's negative 18. So that is negative 18 plus 0i. All right, so now let's distribute. Negative I times 3 is negative 3i. Negative I times 4i, that's negative 4i squared. Remember, I squared is equal to negative 1. So that is a negative 4 times a negative 1. That ends up being a positive 4. And then write it in a plus bi form. All right, so now let's multiply a binomial times a binomial. So what do? We'll FOIL. So that's negative 12 plus 15i minus 24i plus 30i squared. Combine. Remember, I squared is negative 1. And combine like terms. Now, the next multiplication, this is the product of a sum and a difference. So the only things I got to multiply are 3 times 3 and 5i times a negative 5i. Remember, I squared is negative 1. So a negative 25 times a negative 1 is a positive 25. Add them together, that's 34. That's nice. When you take the product of a sum and a difference, notice my final answer does not contain any i's. So the last multiplication problem we're going to do is squaring a binomial. So first of all, I'm going to expand it out. And then FOIL. Combine like terms. Remember, I squared is negative 1. And then combine again. Okay, so we've added, subtracted, and multiplied. Now let's divide. You don't want i's in the denominator because you don't want any radicals in the denominator. And remember, I is equal to the square root of negative 1. All right, so you want to simplify and write the answer in a plus bi form. Now, recall this. I times I is I squared, which is negative 1. So, in this case, I have a monomial in the denominator. So, I'm going to multiply top and bottom by I. And remember, when I multiply top and bottom by the same number, I'm multiplying by 1, which means nothing changes. So, 5i on the top, and I have 3i squared on the bottom. Remember, I squared is negative 1. So, in reality, I have a negative 3 in the denominator. So a plus bi form, that's 0 minus 5/3 I. Now, the last two deal with a binomial. Remember, in the previous example, that when we multiplied by the conjugate, we did not have any i's in my final answer. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the denominator. Now, in the top, we have a monomial times a binomial, so I'm just going to distribute. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times a negative 4i is negative 32i. Now, let's multiply below. So 5 times 5 is 25. This is negative 16i squared. Remember, I squared is negative 1. So 25 plus 16 is 41. Now, I'm going to separate 40 over 41 minus 32 over 41 times I. I cannot reduce either of those fractions any further. I've written this in a plus bi form. Okay, so again, notice my denominator is a binomial, so I'm going to multiply by the denominator's conjugate. So we're going to multiply the numerator on the side here. Fine. Remember, I squared is equal to negative 1. So that is our numerator. Now, let's do the denominator here. Three times 3 is 9, minus 9i squared. Again, I squared is equal to negative 1, so that's really 9 plus 9, that is 18. So my numerator is this. My denominator is this. So I'm going to separate. Each of these fractions I can reduce. And that's our final answer here.